Peace and prosperity. This is Esaia Mystic, and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. This is the channel where I talk all about spirituality and primordial femininity. Today, I want to talk about the subject of why it is important, and really what I want the entire world to just accept about quote unquote black culture or Afro-indigenous culture, Afro-indigenous women. And the reason why it is so important for people in general to accept this about who we are, specifically us, right? Because if we don't know ourselves, how can anybody else truly know us? If we don't tell the truth about ourselves, if we don't own the truth about ourselves, if we don't embody the truth about ourselves, then how can anyone else benefit from the magical prowess and powers that we have as Afro-Indigenous people? So I want to get into what makes us us and why it's important for everyone to acknowledge us for who we are, especially us, on a spiritual and physical level. So I recorded this video previously, and it did not record at all on my laptop. So I'm here re-recording the video. And the first thing I want to say, which was the first thing I said in the last time I recorded, but it's so important to acknowledge this first part, is that we are all spiritually aligned with certain physical attributes. Okay? In astrology, our features, right, when we have certain placements, especially like in Vedic, when we have certain nakshatras and certain planetary rulers over our dominant planets, or the dominant influences in our life, it will influence how we look. It will influence the features that we have. It will influence the way that our bone structure and everything like that. So spiritually, we are related to how we physically choose to come into this experience, to how we choose to physically look. And this also applies not just on an astrological level, but it applies on a very basic genetic level, that we as souls pick and choose and actually align with certain bloodlines and with certain genetics. So this is why in East Indian culture, they are specifically, right, the more colonialized Indian culture has adopted a very, very strong principles around marriage and like who they're allowed to marry, and they want to always make sure that they marry within their culture, they marry within their genetics, right? And it's not just like this with Eastern Indian cultures. I've seen this happen in all, like every racial dynamic, where it can just be on a subconscious level, where they are specifically only wanting their genetics to be present in their gene pool. And there is a reason to this. It's not just because people want to be prejudiced and people want to be mean and evil. Like they literally feel as though, and it's not just a feeling, it's actually based on the truth that when we incarnate into these bodies, into these bloodlines, and pick our gene pool, it's because we are spiritually aligned with with those genetics, with that gene pool. So if we choose to procreate in begin to shift up the genetic pool, specifically for people who are of specific races or lineages that don't have primordial bloodline, right? Or have want to keep up a bloodline that allows beings that are not necessarily of Earth's origin to come into this earthly experience. They might be from somewhere else. They might, have some other spiritual descendancy. They are unable to incarnate into certain kinds of gene pools, okay, and genetics. We, as Afro-indigenous people, quote unquote black people, are able to incarnate into the bodies that we are able to incarnate into, the bodies that are able to absorb sunlight and create high amounts of melanin and basically become the sun embodied, right? And tap into these profound levels of intelligence and DNA and genetic memory. This is why we are some of the most genetically variant and rich people on the planet. We can have some of the most genetically varied children. Like, you never know what you're gonna get. But the dominant, right? The dominant genetic and the dominant frequency is that of being able to absorb the sun and being able, in our hair, being able to coil and receive the energy of our surrounding, the energy of source, right? From the earth and from the sun, right? So we have the ability to, our hair is like these receptor sites, right? And our skin is this amazing, can absorb all of this intelligence and coding from eons and eons, right? That is not something that is privy to any kind of spirit, to any kind of soul. Any kind of spirit and soul can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna hop in a black body today, right? Like, you actually have to have a certain spiritual background. You have to actually have a certain soul in order for you to be able to incarnate into a quote unquote black body or an Afro-indigenous body. And this is the way that it works. And people of other backgrounds subconsciously or consciously know this. And this is why a lot of people will intentionally, like, especially if you try to marry or mate with someone that is of color or like a Afro-indigenous person, like, have a serious problem with it, because what this will then mean is that they will not be able to reincarnate into the bloodline, and that it is more likely that a soul that is a part of the more indigenous or ancient bloodline will actually be the next runner-up, right? So they know this, and this is why they subconsciously choose to, well, some of them choose to make sure that they, Afro-indigenous people are not a part of the gene pool. And also so that they make sure that they are able to incarnate into that bloodline, into their family. And this is why a lot of the families will be like, I've heard stories of like they threaten to kill, or, they'd be threatening their children, if they ever decide to go outside of the family or anything like that. Now, mind you, it's not like that for every family, because I have known, some families to be, like have healed that karma of that ancestral karma and be more connected to the truth and the honoring of what the Afro-indigenous black person represents. And when people are in harmony with that and they are at peace with that, they are also in alignment with source energy. Why? Because Afro-indigenous people represent the physical embodiment of source energy. So this is why, we are seen as the most soulful people on the planet. This is why we're seen as the people who can dance, who can sing, who can act. We're just like, who can cook, you know what I'm saying? Who can basically like do anything and do it really good. And when we do it, it's always mimicked, it's always mocked. Like whatever kind of energy or culture we decide to take on, you better believe that the whole world is going to start acting that way. The whole world is going to start to, embody and mimic some of these things. And it's because we represent source energy. It's because we physically have this. This is our superpower. And every other race has their thing. Okay? Every other race has their superpower. But because we shine so bright and we are like the light, and the creative energy that is so magnificent, and like it just makes you want to just drop your jaw in awe, it arouses a lot of feelings of inferiority and jealousy among other races and other beings, okay? And this has nothing to do with us, but I just want to bring this up because this is the reason for literally the hundreds of years of projected hate, projected inferiority, projected all of these all of these bad, energy. This is the reason for that. It's because when people are around us, that can tend to trigger their sense of disconnection from their own source. And when they feel that disconnection from God, when they feel that disconnection from source, what they want to do is they want to project that out onto us and make it seem like we are unworthy. We are not lovable, Our hair is too kinky. Our skin is too dark. Our, the way we talk is, just savage. Everything about us is, blasphemous. And though we've come a long way, within, the however many hundreds of years, there's still a lot of insidious distaste and just like unacceptance of who we are and what we represent. And it goes on behalf of the other races. And also we play a part, because when we're ignorant to who we are, it allows these things to continue. And what we've adopted is the mindset of, oh, I need to fight this. I need to, fight for justice. I need to, march some more and do some more preaching and teaching about how you shouldn't be like this towards me. But the thing is, it will never stop until you recognize your magic. It will never stop until you own your glory as an Afro-indigenous person in your naturalness, in your core, right? Not when you act like this other race, or not when you look like this other race, or not when you make yourself small so this other race's standards, you can appease them, right? It happens when we own the magic of our naturalness, of who we are at our core. And what inspired this video was, I recently watched a video about this Persian man. He was on the news, and he lives in Egypt, right? He's from Egypt. And he was so upset and mad because the new Cleopatra documentary on Netflix is played by and starred by an Afro-indigenous woman. And he was just so upset that he felt like the Afrocentric movement was just trying to culturally appropriate Egyptian culture, and that none of us are from Egypt, and you know, and this, when he was saying all of this, it brought me back to a time where I remember somebody else was saying things like this, except he was Mexican, and he was very, and still is, very respected amongst like the Mexican community, and like teaching about Mexican history as it relates to the indigenous tribes and all of that. And he started to talk to some other Black people that were learning, right, on their own path of learning more about history. And they were telling him how there were Afro-indigenous people who were in Mexico and are actually from Mexico, and actually they're original Mexicans. And he decided to vent to me about it, because at that time I was just I'm a very loving and open person. So people they just tell me things like I'm gonna be okay with it. But I actually, I didn't have a problem with him venting to me. But what I realized was, he was also upset. He was like, you guys think, oh, well, he didn't say you guys, but he was like, y'all African Americans just think that they are from everywhere, and you are not from everywhere. You cannot culturally appropriate Mexicans. Like, you are from West Africa. Stay in West Africa. Like, stop trying to come over here and take our culture. You know what I'm saying? And when I saw this second video with the Persian man, so upset about this Black woman, and he even decided to bring Halle Bailey into the conversation. He was like, this isn't a fiction movie. This is a documentary. So you need to be accurate. And it just like goes to show how much of the world is still very ignorant to the fact that we were here in the very beginning. And there was not a diverse plethora of, races and genetic variants the way that it is today. I mean, there was genetic variance, but all of these different races and cultures and everything like that, the cultures existed, but they were created by Afro-indigenous people. And if you go into literally the oldest tombs anywhere in the world, you can go to Ireland, you can go to England, you can go to places where seemingly like, oh, there was nothing but Caucasian people there, right? And you will find Afro-indigenous tombs. If you go to anywhere in the world, the original footprint that you will find will be an Afro-indigenous person. I don't care where you go. You can go to Japan. You can go to China. You can go to India. You can go anywhere. That's what you're going to find in the ancient indigenous blueprint of genetics. So that's one thing that the world needs to accept. I'm going to be realistic. World's probably not going to accept it, but you need to accept it, right? If you're here watching this video and you still haven't accepted yourself as an Afro-indigenous person, as the physical embodiment of source energy, of creative energy, of this light, right? Then you also, you can't also acknowledge that the oppression that we've gone through and anything that happens to us, right, will also be the reflection of everyone else's relationship with source energy. So I want you to also tie two and two together, right? We didn't become so disconnected to God, to our bodies, to health, to our spirituality, to the truth, until we began to be oppressed. And this isn't just for us. This is for everybody who decided to come and take camp here on planet Earth. This is for everybody. Everybody became oppressed when we became oppressed. Everybody became brainwashed when we became brainwashed. Everybody became, had this sense, there was this sense of inferiority placed upon everyone when we became the projected source for inferiority. So what happens to us is a reflection of what happens to the collective within our relationship to source energy. And if you don't believe it, like, you don't have to believe it, but all I'm saying is it's the truth. Okay? It's the truth. This is why now, I always say, like, you're when you come back into spirituality, especially if you're a non-melanated being and you're coming into spirituality, and you're going 9 times out of 10, you're going into indigenous cultures, you're going into indigenous practices, you're like seeping into indigenous energy, but you can't acknowledge source energy, right? And the power of these people, right? And what they have the capacity to emanate and exemplify. If you can't do that, then it's still not complete. It's still incomplete. Your spiritual journey has not sufficed. So people are big mad right now because the 6,000 years that they had of projecting all of their ish onto the bright shining star is over. And we are stepping into the limelight, especially Afro-indigenous women. This is the beginning, right? The Great Mother, resurrected, is coming into the forefront. And now you're able to see her as she actually is in media, on Netflix, right? We're actually being cast accurately, okay? Not inclusively, but accurately. Because a lot of people want to say, oh, Bridgerton, with Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte and the Bridgerton series, people are saying, oh, I love the inclusivity. It's like, no, this isn't inclusivity. Like, Black people weren't born yesterday. Like, if you think Black people didn't exist in England, hundreds of years ago, you're retarded. If you think we didn't have money either, you're brainwashed. They're actually showing things as they actually have been and are. Now, they might not be telling the story accurately, but it's a story, so they're going to tell a story. But, all of this continuous of, like, trying to put us in our place and tell us that we are culturally appropriating. We invented culture. We invented every culture. We invented everything. We invented this planet. We created this earth. Okay, this is why when we come into this earth, we have the dark eyes, we have the dark skin, we have the dark hair, we have the coils, because we are the earth. We literally created the earth. And that is something that comes with being an old soul. It comes with being an old spirit. And as we become embodied in that truth, as we align with the truth of our DNA, through activating our DNA, through activating our memories, then this is us owning our magic. This is us owning our power. When I see a healthy Afro-indigenous, like healthy, vibrant Afro-indigenous person, like, I just feel like, oh my gosh, like a goddess walking in a body. You know what I'm saying? When I look in the mirror, I feel like that. But this is something that needs to be our new norm, because if you know, we have to accept this as who we are, because if we don't accept this, we'll continue to be crying and whining about how such and such doesn't respect us, how such and such, you know, is doing this to us, is doing that to us. And it's like, honey, like, sweetie, do you know who you are? You can't stop the sun from shining, and the sun is always going to make somebody uncomfortable. Source energy is always going to call the highest level of existence of in others to rise and come forward. And if their resistance to source is strong enough, they won't do it. They'll actually do the opposite. And by being a melanated and Afro-indigenous person, we also have the ability to delve into the opposite energy of being connected to source, of being super creative, and being able to tap into that truth of life and God. You know, we have the ability to go on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we've seen this in specifically, I mean, American societies where poverty is introduced, right? Where all of these things that go against source energy is introduced. When things that are not natural to source are introduced, we go into this mode of self-destructive. We can become some of the most self-destructive people on the planet. Like, I mean, literally, the most self-loathing, self-destructive people on the planet, who we will wipe each other out. Because this is how we are made up to be. We are made up to be the energetic embodiment of source. We are made to be the light, the love, the God, the goddess. And so when we are conditioned into believing things about ourselves and thinking in ways about ourselves, and our environment is set up that doesn't allow source energy to thrive, then we go into self-destruction. We go into self-loathing. We destroy ourselves. We destroy each other. We bring each other down. And this is just what happens. So if you can just know this about yourself on a genetic level, accept this about yourself on a genetic level, that this is who you are. You are so powerful that the world will literally mimic everything that you decide to do, that you decide is the thing, that you decide is okay, right? And you know, is the trend, or is the look, or is the culture. You are the creator or the creatrix. You are. That's what you are genetically embodied to represent and to activate in the collective, activate in other people. So it's time. That's all I gotta say. So accept this, my dearly beloved Afro-indigenous brother or sister, or maybe you are not Afro-indigenous and you are watching this video because you have Afro-indigenous people in your family or a friend or whatever the case. You have to also accept this as well, because if you cannot accept this about Afro-indigenous people, you can accept nothing about yourself. You can accept no inherent truth about who you are and your lineage and your identity as far as spiritual resonance and everything like that. Okay? So we incarnate into these bodies because our souls are meant for these bodies. We have the genetics and the spiritual coding that matches the energy of these bodies, the creative essence that these bodies have the capacity to emanate. And no other being has access to that unless they decide to become one with us. And so those who do choose to marry or procreate with Afro-indigenous people, they a lot of them already know this, right? A lot of them already can subconsciously feel that, oh, if I do this, then, I am saving my bloodline actually, or I am activating a level of consciousness within my bloodline that will clear any ancestral karma that I had in the past or my family's past. Like there's a lot of benefits, obviously, to merging and becoming one with Afro-indigenous people, and a lot of people of different races already know this, and that's why they doing it. Take the Kardashians, for example. And I don't want to go down the list of the line, but they're a pretty good example. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you feel called. And also comment your thoughts down below in this video. What would you like for me to talk about more? And also check out my links that I have down below in the description box if you would like to work with me or join any of my programs, my offerings, or purchase my book, The Great Woman Resurrected. And with that being said, I will see you in my next video. Peace.